can you remember your first?
My first.
Yes. It wasn't actually very long ago.
I think it was like this little trinket jewellery box that I got.
My first vintage piece was actually a gift from my parents.
My first vintage piece was when I just moved to Brighton as a student.
I went to a warehouse in Clapton.
I trawled around the flea markets in Brighton and found a quite battered sage green Anglepoise lamp.
There were these 6 dining chairs.
It's next to my bed, I cherish it every day.
I don't know, it must be Georgian or something. It's like very symmetrical. It's got like a checkerboard design and a little like brass clasp, but it's, yeah, really pretty and dainty.
It was 2 things, lucite and brass 1960s coat stand and matching coffee table. And I've always had them with me, they've moved around a lot.
They're Danish and they're made from pine and paper cord, and I won't let anyone sit in them if they're wearing like salvage denim, or if it's been raining, or actually I just don't really like people sitting in them in general.
How do they make you feel?
Ooh, like an incredibly chic, discerning person with impeccable taste.
It's unique, isn't it? And you think, well, no one else has got this and no one else is going to style it like this, and you can create your own little vignette which feels very personal to you. Yeah, it's a joyful thing.
How would you describe your interiors aesthetic?
I think I'm a bit of a maximalist. Interestingly, I think I just like stuff. Things make me happy.
Quite a wild mix, I'd say. I'm probably a modernist in general. I've always been kind of function over form, and I love kind of clean lines and ensuring everything visually is quite pared back. But as I get a bit older and as I get more kind of stuck into my own taste, I've found that kind of, I mean, I'm literally sat on a bright red chair, but I was about to say that functionalism is kind of meeting a lot of colour and playfulness. I really love furniture that is functional but is eye-catching, and it kind of like commands a lot of attention.
What 3 words come to mind when thinking of vintage?
Ooh.
I think warmth. Vintage pieces have a certain warmth to them which you don't necessarily get.
I feel like vintage for me is always history, first and foremost. Like everything you're interested in or looking at buying comes with a story that you don't necessarily know. Perhaps that's kind of why vintage can be so exciting.
Loved, elegance and design.
Why did you pick this piece?
What I like so much about this chair is just how kind of arrogant it is. It's very like eye-catching, and as I said, it draws a lot of attention to what essentially is actually just a very simple structure. But it's just so timeless and long-standing, and I love the colour. I think it's so exciting.
Where would you put it?
I would put it everywhere. It would definitely go in my front room, although I've already got an uncomfortable bench in my front room.
It's not a reading chair, is it? And it's not, I would say it's not really a dining chair. It would just be a piece, I think. It would definitely have to be like in the sight line of a room, so I could kind of like keep an eye on it.
End of a bed, it would look amazing. If we had room, it would go on the end of my bed and it would become like a living wardrobe.
Looking at some of your colleagues' pieces, which one would you steal?
Oh yes, good question.
What's the name of that red chair? I really love that red chair.
A Caramite chair.
I really love Morgan's red chair.
It's just fabulous. And I also think red is just such a colour at the moment. I love a colour pop. I'm not normally drawn to pieces quite as pared back as this. I quite like pops of colour in the home.
Best interiors advice you've ever received?
I don't know. I think like part of the playful thing about interiors is kind of ignoring the advice that you're given and seeing where you get to. I don't know, I find if I take on lots of other people's advice, I start to feel like the things I'm picking are trendy and I might not like them after a while.
Whenever I move to a new place, the first thing I do is hang the art on the wall and then typically build a room around that. I think your artwork is, for me, it's the first thing that goes up in a new home.
I've got one bit of advice from my mum that kind of sticks with me, that everything you touch or you handle is what you should invest money in. And it was reiterated. I went to a shoot preview a couple of weeks ago, and I really liked the client's front door handle, and I mentioned it, and he said that the door handle is the handshake of the home, which I was just so fascinated by, and just kind of reminded me of everything you're using and feeling all the time is a real testament of like the general quality of your design and where you notice it the most. I think that's a key piece.
Do you have a dream vintage piece?
My dream vintage piece. Okay, so there's an Alvar Aalto bentwood plywood table that I've seen in Monmouth coffee shop, and they only bring it out like once a year. And it's really beautiful. It's from the 1930s, and they've got a kind of sky blue top to it, and they're quite rare. And I've got a friend that lives in Finland that has one that's kind of bottle green as well. But the sort of rectangular sky blue 30s Aalto table is my dream piece.
I love lamps. Like, I'm just very anti-big light, so I think probably just growing up, I'm gonna have a massive collection of lamps. I love like the Chinese ginger jar lamps. So yeah, ideally just fill my home with them.
What I'd love to have is one of those toga, you know, the Lin Rosé beautiful suites, but in like a sunken living room around a big roaring log fire overlooking a beautiful green garden. That would be the dream.